We hope. Alright, it's Thursday. Well, it's Thursday here. No, it's actually. I should do something. I have not been dating the iWorld, so let's start that. There, now you know what day it is. When it was actually done in crap. It's like, there's not really a lot going on in the iWorld. There's plenty of theories. There's a plethora of theories beginning about the iWorld. Because we're all going to find out in the next few weeks. The only thing we know for sure is something I don't know if you want to talk about, and that is Steve Jobs, who I inappropriately said was 70-something. He's only 56. That's like...
I did see that.
Because he was born in 55, it's 2011, that's 56. And actually I think he was born in February, so that would be 56 next month. So that's like, he just looks 70. It's like...
I'm not. It's funny. When the whole thing came out about him taking leave, I was surprised. Hearing what he's been through, so that's not surprising, really.
Well, no. It's like, and honestly, I stand by the theory I said in PC versus Mac. I don't think he's faking sick, but I think this is a good time for him to just take sick leave, go away, because the things that why Apple hasn't confirmed they're going to happen, we all know they're going to happen in the next month or two. And if those things go off without a hitch, without Steve, maybe Apple can finally prove as a company, see, when Steve Jobs is away, we can still do something.
I think the problem is, the reason, like you said, I think they probably are trying to do that, but I think the reason why people would, if Steve Jobs was to leave, would be concerned is because obviously even though it wasn't the same way before, when he left last time, of course, the company went right downhill. So that's why I think people would be worried.
That's not so much that Steve Jobs left. That has more to do with the fact that Scully was a paranoid nut who didn't trust anybody who tried to help Apple. He's like, why are you trying to help Apple? What's the matter with you? He's like...
Well, as I say, yeah, I know that obviously before he was basically removed by force, but obviously what I'm saying is that when he's been there, they've done pretty well, but in the few years he wasn't there, they really nearly went out of business, so that's probably why people would be worried.
Well, and so that has to do with the way Apple functioned back then, and I think Apple's trying to prove we don't function that way anymore, because 90% of the time when Steve Jobs is at Apple, Steve Jobs micromanages every little aspect of Apple. He doesn't trust people to make actual decisions, so then they forget that they actually can, and then when their overlord is not there going... 1 + 1 = 2, so saith the Steve. They forget that these things are still true.
Yeah, well, I think, and as I say, as far as, having to, the way I see it as well is that I think they've got a pretty good strategy with things now. It seems like a lot of things to do with physical devices and that, the way it seems to work lately over the past few years is that Apple gets in with the first device that works well, and then when other companies come along and start jumping on the bandwagon and they add more things at a quicker time span, then Apple realizes they've made what they can out of it and they move on and bring out something else. That's the way it seems to go. Like with the iPhone, they were the first to bring out the phone as we know them today, and then Android came along and has added more and more features, and Apple was still behind, and then Apple moved on to the iPad.
There's some debate on that, but that's more a PC v Mac-ish thing than it is an iWorld thing, so we won't get into that. But it's one of those things, although you could argue with the Newton, Apple was probably first, but it's one of those things, being first doesn't necessarily mean you win. Being the first to do it right.
Well, that's the thing.
And one of the real problems with Apple is, I said this in something that actually hasn't... I forget if I said this in Linux, or I think I said this in PC versus Mac, and I've said this several times off the air. I think that was actually the first time I said it on something that actually wound up getting published. I know this is Apple blasphemy, but for Apple as a company, the day when Apple and Steve Jobs part company, whether it's due to the untimely demise of Mr. Jobs or he just decides he's sick of it and wants to retire and he's going to let somebody else take the reins for a while or phase him out or whatever, that could potentially be the best thing for Apple. Because Apple has a lot of things going forward as a company. The thing that would serve it best to lose right now is the idea that they're perfect and that there's only one way to do everything. The idea of not Apple will never be an open company. That's just not Apple. But the idea of loosening the reins a little bit and trusting the end user as their customer just a little bit, just enough to go, well, maybe we should listen to them occasionally.
Yeah, but also as well, I think for whatever you say, rightly or wrongly, of how close they are, the thing is as well, from the point of view of like the consumers, I think people obviously buy Apple products and what have you, as long as they keep their head about and they understand that Apple's not the be all and end all, it is an enjoyable thing to speculate, as long as when they release the product, you last sentence about it.
Okay, hang on. Do you have autocorrect on your volume?
No.
Okay, like you just got really low there for a minute. I don't really know why.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. No. Well, yeah. That's the thing. But there's also some people who deliberately don't buy them that would because Apple doesn't want them to, because they think this way only. That's. It's just. I think that hurts them more than anything. It's like some people have said they think he has cancer again. That may or may not be true. Whether he does or doesn't have cancer, he's gotten through it once. I think speculating on that too much is a thing right now. But that being said, he is 56 years old. He's not the youngest 56-year-old. Over the next 5 to 10 years, one way or another, Apple should be looking to begin the process of parting ways.
Well, the one good thing about it is that when they done their Back to the Mac event, they did bring in a lot of people to do sections of the keynote. So, and after it, people were saying that looks like they are trying to lay foundations ready for when that happens.
I think that's what they're doing. I think Apple has realized, because every time Steve Jobs disappears from the spotlight, it's like Apple's stock plummets. It's like, where's Steve Jobs? Where's Steve Jobs? It's like Apple has to get this for Apple as a company to survive, because no matter what, rather he's going in, whether he has the flu or rather he has cancer again or something, he's 56 years old. He's not going to live to be 250 or whatever. If Apple wants to make it through the 21st century, they need to begin separating Steve Jobs from Apple.
Yeah, well, no, obviously, like you say, because that's the thing. It's all very well now when he's got them to where they are, but when things are where you don't know when his time's going to come to an end, like you say, they do need to start thinking ahead.
Yeah, well, no, and it's not like there aren't a number of people at Apple, maybe not a single individual that could replace Steve Jobs, but there are a number of really creative, really inspired people at Apple that they have the people that they could replace Steve Jobs. But that's not an overnight process either. That's a combination of, okay, Steve, you need to actually let these people make some decisions on this project to see if they really know what they're doing. And it's like, we need to begin grooming successors. We need to begin.
Well, I think, and what you were saying about Apple having to change some of their approaches, for the time when Steve Jobs is no longer as the CEO. The thing is from what I heard, that the people that are lined up to take over parts of Steve Jobs' day-to-day running, he's basically been heavily involved in the process of choosing these people.
I'm hoping for Apple as a company to evolve, as I don't like the current Apple at all. I'm hoping that some of these people have been being two-faced to Steve Jobs, and that they realize it's necessary for Apple to evolve a little bit as a company, but they're not stupid enough to be honest with Jobs and go, oh yeah, Steve, sure, I believe, closed box, everybody, our customers are the enemy. I believe me, Steve, I'm 100% with you. That's like...
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, if you do it, where you call it right, or if you want to play smart about it, you get the positives of what you can out of it, and then when the time comes and things move on, then you can do what you think is truly right once you've got all the best parts out of something.
It's like to be honest, a lot of the thing, it's going to pain me to say this, and people who watch this channel are like, boy, you're being real two-faced here. No, I'm not being two-faced. This is the thing I've been saying since the beginning about Apple as a company. A lot of the things Apple does are like, if they just get rid of the 10 to 20% evil, the xenophobia-ness, they would be good things. But when you take it past that line and keep going, then they become really dark, what the expletive of choice things. And it's that 20% evil Apple needs to lose as a company. They need to embrace some of the don't be evil philosophy.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't think I've ever, from what I can remember, I don't think I've ever heard you say that you'll never buy Apple. It's just that in their current form you wouldn't.
I wouldn't. Well, there's something wrong with every one of their products. The thing that's drove me nuts about Apple since the 80s has been just the UI irks me. Do I ever expect the out-of-the-box UI on a Mac to be anything what it's been for the last 20-some-odd years? No. But if there was the ability to customize that and make it something that makes sense to me, I don't particularly like Windows. It doesn't mean I never use Windows systems. There's necessity for it at this point. If I was in a situation where OS X was a necessity and I didn't have to give up everything else to use OS X, I wouldn't not use it. I have no intention of making mountains out of molehills. It's when using OS X at all makes me make a mountain out of the molehill. That's a real deal breaker. And there's a number of people who are in that boat.
Yeah, well, no, as you say, I think that that's the thing, isn't it? Is that if you have to use a system for whatever reason, then you just, get on with it. But if you don't have to use it and you find it particularly awkward and not to your taste, then why should you?
Well, yeah. There's a number of people who would use OS X, even if it's not their favorite platform and it's not their preferred choice, if it would play nice with the rest of their ecosystem. Like they'd say, well, it's perfect to be this node for this thing, so I'll stick a Mac in there. But when it wants you to go, well, no, now you got to change this. The whole ecosystem must evolve to adapt to this. Then it's like, well, no, all that lost labor and other equipment I didn't. No, I'll make the mountain out of the molehill because that's a smaller mountain.
No, like you say, I think that's because it's so closed off. And the only way that you can enable to have, potentially, if you really wanted to go this crazy, that you can run free operating systems in one machine is to get a Mac, but then you're at the mercy of OS X and what Apple chooses to do with it.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, honestly, if you want to build the 3OS system, the better road to go right now, even though it's illegal as all hell, is a Hackintosh as opposed to an actual Mac. Because you have a little broader choice of hardware. You can find the balance to keep all three OSs happy as opposed to something that's specifically designed for OS X and, it will do Windows 2. As opposed to, because there is some hardware on some Macs that is very un-BSD Linux friendly. It just isn't. So and you don't necessarily need that hardware to run a Hackintosh. You do for it to be legal, but not to run a Hackintosh. So.
Well, and I think the thing is that when you say about keeping all be able to make all operating systems all function well, but the thing is, I think obviously for obvious reasons, Apple would do their best to make sure OS X wasn't happy if you tried that route.
Oh yeah, no, it's like they do what they can, but the Intel made that a lot easier. Well, and it's one of those things. If Apple woke up one day and decided they were going to see the light and license OS 10, so that Hackintoshes were all of a sudden legal, that they weren't a crime against Apple and digital content management and so forth, and a violation of the U law. Do I expect them to be the same $20 to $30 upgrade they are for a Mac? No. I expect the pricing for OS 10 for a Hackintosh to be very comparable to the licensing for buying Windows if you didn't get it with the machine. I expect OS 10 to cost somewhere between $100 and $200. That's just what I expect it to cost for the Hackintosh license.
But that's the thing then, as you say, so they could do two things really if they wanted to.
Yeah, it's like it'd be an alternative revenue stream. On the same token, if I call up Apple support and there's a problem with my hardware, and I did not buy a Mac, I did not buy the hardware from Apple, I bought the hardware from somewhere else, do I expect Apple Care to support it? No! And these are like all the arguments people make against, like, well, it's like then they'd have to support other hardware. That's like, no, they don't. Nobody would expect them to do that. It's like, this is something the fanboys would expect. I'm like, no, it makes no financial sense. Nobody would be expecting this. The type of people who are going to build Hackintoshes are usually more technical people, and by no stretch of the imagination are these people going to go, yeah, it's your fault I'm a dumbass. It's like, honestly, do you see this out of these people?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like from the point of view, obviously, if you're going to make that decision, you do have to think about it very carefully because, like you say, if you do get yourself into a situation, you're on your own.
Yeah. So, it's one of those. Anything else we want to say on the subject, or we kind of want to move on?
I think we've said everything on that one.
Okay.